Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you so much again for joining me here. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We got a super important update. Bitcoin and Ethereum both approaching their all-time highs. Solana, SUI, XRP also hitting those resistance ranges. We're going to discuss Bitcoin dominance, specifically CME futures, as well as this power of three manipulative wave setup here, looking very strong for continuation higher. Okay, definitely a good continuation potential. So be very careful shorting. Main thing we're going to focus on too is the altcoin season index, such as 1.71 trillion in market cap, as well as the huge amount of ETF inflows coming into Ethereum. Be sure to stick around. Let's take a look. Before we jump into the charts, just want to quickly highlight a nice deposit reward bonus and future trading rewards here from Bitunix. There's no KYC or VPN required, and this is available between now and October 30th. Furthermore, if you want to bolster your knowledge and become a better, more consistent trader, we've got a trading academy, community, and signals group. Link down below for that, cryptocache.tech. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started off with our crypto market overview, kind of just getting a baseline of what's going on in the market, right? So starting off with the ETF net flow, right? First things first, we want to understand that we got a lot more flowing into Ethereum than Bitcoin. That's generally a favorable sign for altcoins as per usual, because that's mostly the front runner for altcoins. We do want to be careful and cautious and just thinking that altcoin season's here. I think it's more of an ETH season, for lack of better terms, but this tells us there's a ton of strength in Ethereum. So if that's a coin you're trading, you're probably better off taking longs than you are shorts. Just the general kind of rule of thumb there. Taking a quick look here at altcoin season index, this is something that's super important here for alt season. We need to be in the 1.5 trillion range here for market cap. We're at 1.7 now, so this is looking good, basically implying a lot of altcoins are doing very well. Keep in mind, altcoin season index doesn't really specify that every single altcoin is going to do great, so keep that in mind. A lot of alts are underperforming still at this point. Now taking a look at the ones we're going to cover here today, the quick understanding is that Bitcoin and Ethereum are both super close to their all-time high. Bitcoin's all-time high is 123,300. Very close approximate. Same thing with ETH. 4870 is the close approximate there for its all-time high. So both are getting super close. We can probably expect an initial rejection there at that level just because there's going to be some selling pressure. Furthermore, Solana has a resistance here locally at about 203, 202. That's been a consistent number in the past. And the same thing with SUI. Of course, $4 holding strong as that resistance, but the more we test that, the more likely that is to break. And then XRP, of course, still kind of underperforming, even though we did squeeze some profit out on our long position yesterday. From what I think it was 320 to 331. The concept here remains the same. 343 is that significant resistance for us. Moving on to the back-end data here, this is basically kind of a comparison of all four dominance charts, at least the important ones. Bitcoin dominance pulling back, losing its support. It's a very good sign for altcoins, implying that more altcoins are doing well and that we have more propensity for the price action to do better for altcoins. Furthermore, Ethereum here, it's kind of on its own, just taking off, doing its own thing. Fantastic amount of dominance there, absorbing a lot of market cap. Same thing here as well. When we look at stablecoin, this is important to recognize. As this goes down, the price action for altcoins typically goes up because money flows away from stablecoin, basically USDT, USDC, and goes into altcoins. That's essentially the concept, at least with Bitcoin dominance pulling back. These are two very good signs when they run concurrent with each other. When we take a look here at the total three, this is just a reflection of all altcoins excluding Bitcoin dominance, Ethereum, and stablecoin. So it's kind of a good representation of how altcoins are truly moving and continuing right now. We can see a rejection or resistance here at roughly 850 billion though. So that is a pretty big number there. That's somewhat of a resistance, so we may actually see a bit of a pullback here soon based on all-time highs being achieved and local highs for other coins too. Just quickly to note, Solana has filled its CME gap, but there's still a CME gap left remaining for Ethereum, 40.73 to 41.85, and for Bitcoin we're looking at 117.4 to 118.5. Okay. Now those aren't guaranteed to get filled, but the odds of them getting filled is fairly high. There's just kind of statistical favorability. That's how it works generally. I think ETH is a lot less likely than Bitcoin, but still something to be mindful of. Taking a look here, this is a manipulative power of three trade setup. We look just to clarify some key level supports for Bitcoin. Previously, we had 112,000. As a resistance, worked as a support level here with that manipulative wave down. We've also got 120,000 here that has since been broken. Truly, we hasn't closed above that yet today. This is the daily time frame, but the concept remains the same. Until we close above, we want to presume that's the resistance. And at this point, this manipulative wave here is looking pretty solid. What I mean by that is just simply put, when you have a power of three trade setup, you'll see an accumulation phase, trapping longs here, basically, because this was a bullish rectangle, the price should have broke up, but instead it breaks down. then at this point, most people trigger short sales and they start selling and selling and selling. Big money knows this, market makers know this, so they buy the price right here, right here, right here into resistance and blast straight through those local and macro liquidation ranges. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the macro liquidation ranges for Bitcoin and kind of go from there. So it helps us kind of understand specifically where we're at in this short-term or long-term continuation. Obviously, we have a bull flag pattern here that's broken out. We talked about that for a while. That's why we're in longs and not shorts right now. And to quickly clarify too, in case you didn't know, or you're not part of our community, 23% from XRP on our long position there, Dogecoin 98% for a week trade from last week, and of course a Litecoin long as well from yesterday in the afternoon at about 33%. So good trades there, definitely good calls in that sense, but once again, it's mostly just based on the simple fact that we're in a position now where the market's moving very well, okay? And it's moving to the upside. You want to be very careful shorting. Even at this exact moment, while we're traveling to resistances, it's important just to not to get too crazy with shorts, okay? If you're gonna do it, a little bit at a time. Anyways, this is top traders average leverage, and this basically tells us here the leverage delta is more bullish than bearish. So we have more longs than shorts in the market for those who have super large positions. Those are just high leverage trades. Open interest. Let's talk about this. This is super important. I've been talking about how 120,000 is that resistance for us, right? We've tested it like 9 or 10 times in the last 2 weeks. Now that we've broken through that, doesn't mean we just take a long and go crazy, but if we can close above 120K today, that would show 24 hours of basically a continuation in this direction, and more importantly, closing above a key level resistance, therefore reinforcing the fact that bears are losing control and they're not able to sell quite as much as there is buying pressure. Therefore, 120 should be our new support, and in turn, maybe a good consideration for a long. Okay, so we do see 120 again, you may want to consider taking a long at that point. Furthermore, we see liquidation long delta is higher. We have 10 billion more in longs than shorts. Fantastic. Furthermore, too, here is as well with Bitcoin, we can see the late shorts are starting to stack up again. 122 to 125, that's probably the next area of liquidation, or sorry, more important, that's the next area of consideration for the price moving higher, okay? And that's a good sign altogether here if you're in a long position. Take a look here, true retail longs, we're looking at about 5.5%. That's actually good when this number is lower than open interest. Open interest is at 95%. That is super awesome. We like to see this influx there, basically that difference between the two, because that really infers that more open interest allows for the price to go higher, and people are more interested in buying right now than they are selling. So we see all indications on the back end letting us know further upside makes sense. Now, do you take a long into a key level resistance? Sometimes that's not always the best call, right? So let's take a quick look at the daily time frame and kind of work our way down, just kind of see where we're at here for Bitcoin. So quickly to note, Bitcoin, simple as this, is showing a lot of overextension, but a lot of bullish continuation potential. So we're at a 9 now on TD sequential. In most cases, when you do see 9s on TDS, just like in recent past, the price either goes sideways or it goes back down. So hypothetically, we're going to experience range-bound activity in the range of 120 to 124 before the price takes off, or we essentially pull back. Those are the two potential scenarios. Price could still continue higher. It just makes less sense considering this is an all-time high, all right? But once we break that level, all-time high price discovery, things get kind of nuts. So just be mindful of that. So the daily time frame, super bullish. There's nothing really here telling us we have any hidden bearish divergences. There's no Elliott wave crap. It's pretty transparent and straightforward. We're likely to break higher than we are lower based on the fact that we're consistently retesting these levels here, and we're also retesting our 121.7K range and likely to break that too here. This is a kind of a handle pattern, or you could say it's a really ugly cup and handle. But still, the thing that remains the same here is that this overextension retest is consistent in trading. You generally see breakouts when this happens. So I think there's still more favorability of the price going higher than lower at this point. If we hit 123.3, you may expect an initial rejection, and it may be advantageous to consider a short at that point. But once more, liquidation's heavy upwards of 124, and this is an area of consideration there. So between 123 and 124, I'd be very careful shorting. We probably see some strong pushes higher if that happens. Let's move on to ETH, kind of see what's going on with Ethereum, and just kind of recognize, kind of where we're at here. First of all, all-time high, 4,870 is a close approximate. That was our all-time high from 2021, November of 21. So that is essentially the all-time high for for this coin. And obviously, if we do take a look at the daily time frame, we can see massive overextensions here as well. And fib levels here, coincidentally, are 2.618 fib levels, matching up perfectly with the all-time high. So my money is on a rejection at about the 4,900 range, and the price going to pull back. That may be a better consideration of short than it is right now. Now, we may not hit that level, but just know that is there's more confluence there, and you want to trade on confluence, not just magical fib levels, okay? That's kind of how you want to do it or should do it. Unfortunately, a lot of other traders out there, specifically those with larger YouTube channels, tend to kind of favor just using, a magical number on the chart. Once more, when I say that, I'm using sarcasm, of course, but for the most part, you do want to recognize that, fib levels, they're important, but unless you have like other things that are consistent with those fib levels, the likelihood of them hitting is lower. All right, so just keep that in mind. Just some food for thought. We have a ton of open interest here for Ethereum at 43.75. We look at liquidation long delta, super bullish at 30 billion now. That's up from 20 billion yesterday when we last looked at this. It's just you don't want to short against that. So I think 4,900 to 5,000 seems like a much more practical short at this point, even though it's still a high risk. Okay, just know that. Other than that, we got some local liquidation here between 47 and 4,800, and some late longs there, or sorry, late shorts with some stop losses and or liquidation events between 5,000 and 5,150. So I think those are less likely to happen, but that's still just more incentive for the whales. So the truth is, you don't want to short this coin. Taking it long right now is technically higher risk, but it's much lower risk than taking a short, right? So when you have a situation where like you're overextended, you're concerned about taking a long at the top, you probably shouldn't do that, right? Same thing as well as trying to short this coin that's super on fire. That's also a bad idea too. You want to just be patient and wait and pump the brakes. So friendly advice to those who are watching, my community members, chill out. Take a day off for a change. It's okay. This is not a problem. You don't have to FOMO everything in, and you don't have to be a crazy trader. All right. Let's move on to Solana, see where we're at here. The quick understanding here is Solana is performing a lot better than I expected after it broke through that resistance. Or more importantly, once it broke resistance, it just took off, right? So 185, that's potential new support level for us. I'll update our fib levels and send this out here, but generally speaking, these are still fairly consistent with our previous highs. We got support at 185 to 188. Let's take a look at the backend data and kind of recognize here that we are seeing a lot of open interest at 185 to 186. Reinforces support. Same thing as well with liquidation long delta remaining high at 2 billion. And then of course, liquidation, not much left here. There's a pretty big chunk at 205. That doesn't really tell us too much. So the truth is the charts are letting us know that continuation higher makes more sense. We rejected pretty close to our local high here, our local overextension. So it would make sense for us to consolidate here, potentially perform somewhat of a cup and handle pattern. These do play out quite often in these scenarios here when you retest a high. But keep in mind, they usually kind of work themselves into flag patterns. So most cup and handles are bull flag patterns that inevitably break to the upside. Okay, so it kind of looks like this here. XRP had the same pattern that we traded at 320, took profit at 330, and that's essentially the concept there. I'll show you that chart here in a minute. But what I'm getting at here is a very early potential reality of seeing a bull flag here, but the concept remains the same. If you start to see a lower channel that retests this level, I would be looking for a flag pattern that kind of works itself into a situation like this. Just kind of give you food for thought, right? So it'll basically be one of these. This is where you want to get in, where the price action consolidates and creates a higher high and a higher low after retesting the previous high as a new low. Okay, so those are just kind of some things we're going to be looking for. Either way, at this point, everything's pretty bullish in this coin. We're seeing a little bit of a divergence on the stochastic, but it's super common when you hit an overextended state. Keep in mind, we've been moving the same direction for quite a while, 36 hours almost. So capitulation, pullback, it makes perfect sense. I don't necessarily recommend shorting this coin, but I can tell you that it's a 50-50 shot if the price pulls back at this point. It really just depends on if Bitcoin's going to run or if it's going to stall out. So that's kind of where we're at there for Solana. Generally one of those situations where it's best to kind of avoid trading just because there's too many conflicting factors in both directions. That's kind of my thoughts, but it is more bullish than bearish, just to clarify. Moving on to SUI, let's look at the backend data first here and kind of just recognize too, I've talked about this for a while, $4 is a heavy area of open interest. So you can kind of see this highlighted here. We see tons of resistance there. So the more resistance at a level, the more likely it is to break, the more often you test it. But initially it rejects the first time, which we've already seen. Therefore, we may actually have enough prowess here, enough volume to see the price continue higher with liquidation long delta increasing and the amount of leverage being kind of added to the position here. So 410 to 430, there's a lot of leverage there still with liquidation. That's generally a bad idea to try to short that range. So I get shorting into a resistance. I totally get it, but the market's on fire right now, and it's best not to try to short against it. So the truth is here, looking at the daily time frame, we're still in really good shape. We do have once more that buy wall or that sell wall at $4, but all the signs here are super bullish. So everything's kind of letting us know that further upside makes tons of sense. There's nothing really conflicting telling us that we're soon to diverge. If you do take a short, just know it's a higher risk short than it is to take a long right now, even though we are moving into a key level resistance. But you got to recognize the price is already rejected a few times here, and it's also got a taste of blood to get to get above that price action too. So I don't really trust coins that have this kind of activity. But if you were to look at, if I were to be a betting person here, which I'm generally not, we'll look at. I would say we're more likely to go higher because we're maintaining above our point of control. We've retested and kind of scratched the surface of this resistance level, and there's way too many people trying to short this coin. I think we're more likely to go higher. Take a look at XRP. Here's that bull flag pattern that we played out yesterday, or we traded rather. That did play out. Granted, these are not guarantees, but what you look for in a situation like this is a retest of the previous highs, which we saw there, as well as the fact that we established a descending type of trend. Okay, so overall, that's generally how you want to try to identify those kind of coin play out. But what we want to look at here too on the back end is that open interest is all over the place. We're seeing a heavy concentration once more at 343. We've discussed that being a strong resistance for us, and $3 even is that local support. 320 has established itself as a new point of control based on the local volume. So 320, 321 is that new support range. But the crazy thing is here, there's a lot of liquidation delta, or basically a lot of short liquidation, implying more people are shorting this coin than taking longs. And I get that. It's sensible to consider shorting this coin because it's not really moving super fast. It only moved up because Bitcoin moved up, right? And that's how you want to trade this coin. You trade this coin based on how Bitcoin's moving. People seem to think that this coin being their favorite, most amazing coin is something that's like, super awesome, and that it's going to do well because they like it, right? That's not the concept. XRP moves very consistent with Bitcoin, and you have to identify that and recognize it, at least for the moment. It doesn't always work out that way. Coins break free at some point, but for right now, we're seeing a lot of consistency there, which is the reason why it's bullish, right? And that's why I'm bullish on it, just based on the simple fact that Bitcoin is too. So until Bitcoin gives us some signs that it loses that 120K resistance, or support rather, the current potential resistance, then we should presume that this 320 to 315 range, the point of control, the overall volume for this coin, it's going to remain as a good solid support. So there's nothing super stark and amazing here, no hidden bearish divergences. Everything's pretty standard, looking fairly bullish. While I would like to see the money flow index a little bit higher, all the other signs here are there that we're likely to continue further up than down. Once more, that it will all change if Bitcoin pulls back. So please understand that. All right, folks, that's all we got here. Thanks again for being an amazing part of my life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow if you haven't already. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have yourself a phenomenal rest of your day. We'll see you soon.